Oh, yeah, sure. I'll grab the card.
Everybody ready? Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, staff. Good morning, afternoon, folks in the audience. Let the record show that today is June the 2nd. The time is 1:30, and we will now call the Amherst County Service Authority Board to order. We will open this portion of the meeting up to citizen comments. Are there any citizens in the audience who would wish to speak? Yes, please.
Do I need to have my mask on?
I'm sorry?
Do I need to have a mask on to speak?
Do you have one?
Yeah.
That would be good. Thank you. Push that button right there. It will turn green.
It's on.
Okay. Give us your name and address, please.
Deborah Woodfin at 187 Tide Lane, Madison Heights. And I would just like to ask the board to, it's on the agenda, about online billing and payments. There's fees associated with that, and I think that it should be considered that if residents choose paperless billing, that if that's made available, that maybe the fee could be done away with or lessened like the other utilities such as APCO does. They used to have a fee that was $1.85 regardless of what your bill was, but if you chose paperless billing, then they did away with that fee altogether. And another issue that I have that's unrelated to that is if there's disturbances in our water, such as caused by, any number of things, but if it disturbs our water to the point that it can't be used, there needs to be some sort of procedure in place as to how that's handled. Because I feel like my current bill was inflated. It was inflated because it was more days on the billing cycle, but it was also a water disturbance that caused us to have to run our water a little bit more than we normally would to clear the lines. And I don't know all there is to know about all that, but I just wanted to address the board that I think there needs to be some sort of procedure put in place if there is a disturbance in our water, such as notifying us of what's going on and about how long it would be and what other kind of procedures need to take place to clear our water. But my main issue today was to ask that we have some sort of way to choose if we want to do paperless billing and lessen the fees for online payments. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lane, I'm not going to ask you to give your phone number in public, but can you please give your phone number to Mr. Hopkins in the blue shirt?
Okay.
So you got her? Okay, so you can communicate with her directly.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lane.
It's
Woodfin.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, we will now close some comments and move to approval of the agenda. Board members, any questions, any changes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no, this agenda is now approved. And we'll move on to approval of the minutes. And is everything
Madam Chair,
satisfaction?
Madam Chair, I'd like to clarify in a portion of the minutes where we were talking about the road serving Phelps Road School. I believe what I said, I was in support of pursuing getting the easements. I did not necessarily say I was in support of constructing the project, as the minutes would leave someone to believe. So I'd like for that to be clarified.
Mr. Hopkins, will you take care of that for us, please?
Sure.
Are there any other changes to May 5th minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve as amended.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no. The minutes with the changes are approved. And we will move on to our financial report from Mr. Hopkins.
Before we do that, how does that usually we sign the minutes right after the meeting. How will I get?
You'll need to amend them and let us sign
At the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, financial report. Things are not as bad as I had, I was concerned about last meeting. Of course, it's still early. The sales, water sales are actually up compared to March of this year, by almost $50,000. And I mean, that sounds real good, but that you also have to keep in mind, it depends on what areas we're reading meters at that time. So you can't really go with that number as being indicative. But if you look at the year-to-date numbers going back to last year, compared to April of last year, year-to-date sales are down 8.5%. Revenues are only down less than 5%, and that's because mostly having to do with new connections. We've had a lot of connections so far this year. They're up almost 150%. So we've got a lot of revenues in from that took up a lot of the slack for water. Wastewater can't really stay the same. The sales are down compared to last month. Year to date, they're down almost 17%, and sales are, and revenues are down a little over 15%, and connections are also down. Combined water and wastewater, the sales are up about 10% compared to last month, but year-to-date sales are down 10.5%. Year-to-date revenues are down about 7.25%. And that's not as bad as I was expecting. It's about $105,000 compared to last year. That's about 2.1% of the adopted budget for this year, but that's not all having to do with the pandemic. We've been talking for the last several months about the other things that are contributing to the revenues being down. So the concerns that I had and still have regarding revenues drops because of the pandemic so far are not near as bad as I thought they could be, but I am going to keep an eye on it. And we'll be talking later on in the meeting about things we can do to address it if it comes up. That's an agenda item under new business. And unless you all have any questions, that's all I've got on the report.
All right, Mr. Hopkins, could you, in your minutes, please show that Mr. Ayers is absent from this meeting? However, Mr. Wood and Mr. Perro are here in the audience. Thank you. Let's move on to old business, please.
Not a lot new on the James River Bank projects. I was down there over the weekend and took a look at the new erosion areas. We've had a lot of rain, and they've gotten a little bit worse. I've been talking to Mr. Bentham here about ways we can try to temporarily mitigate that, and we're going to get something done about that before it gets to be anything really bad. On water and sewer extension infrastructure projects, the Old Town Madison Heights Main Street sewer project is now closed. We got the closure letter from the DHCD, and I'm just waiting to hear back from the finance department that the final reimbursement from DHCD to ACSA has been received. Nothing new on the Woodview Water Main project. The Lakeview Sewer project, I'm still working with VDH on possible stimulus funding for a construction-ready project. They talked to Gary Gillum last week, and he said that they have submitted the project for funding, and it's the only project being submitted from this district, which is good news. And I really don't know when he would expect to hear back. To have that project even more ready, I have mailed all of the easement documents we need 8, and I've mailed them out to the homeowners in the area. I've gotten 2 back, and I'm trying to follow up with the other 6 and see if I can get them nailed down. It'll be bid as 2 separate projects, one for the directional bore under Lakeview Drive, and one for doing all the other work. It'll be 2 separate bids. The Old Madison Sewage Pump Station project it's been tabled for the moment. We just got some other things to do. Reservoir primary spillway upgrades. We've been talking about that a bit. The project was advertised for construction May 17th. We've got a pre-bid meeting this Thursday, and bids are scheduled to be open on the 18th. With the work scheduled to be done by late autumn of this year. It's an estimated $75,000 project. The benefits are, the main thing to me is the protection of the dam in case of storms. We're supposed to have, there's a forecast of a heavier than normal hurricane season this year, and I'd like to have that in place to be able to lower the lake level and protect the dam. And our treatment manager and operations manager are as focused as they are on that. They're also focused on being able to use that sluice gate once it's operational again, to open it a couple times a year and flush out some of the sediments at the bottom of the lake that are very heavily laden with iron and manganese. So two big benefits for the project, and also I use that as a selling point to get the DCR dam extension for the dam project, which we'll be talking later on in the meeting. The Woody's Lake Road project, there was one bid, $1.3 million. As I reported in the past, this is a service authority project, but I've got an agreement with VDOT that they're going to reimburse us for all of the engineering services and all the construction. So there are there's a new business item that's got the letters from VDOT that describe that. But we'll be talking about that in a bit. Phelps Road School, we've got we're actually under construction right now. We started last week, 2 weeks ago. They're out there working right now. We should have the new water line installed on the school property within the next week or so. And I think we're getting materials for the directional bore delivered this week, and that contractor is supposed to start his work next week. So I'm expecting to have all that work, all the installation done by the middle of this month, or maybe the end of this month. And then we got to do, of course, do the disinfection and the purification testing and all that. It should be operational by the middle of July. Let's see. BC Mobile Home Park, we've been talking about this quite a bit. I'm still working with the Central Virginia Training Center Utilities Director and the County Public Safety Director and Herb and Profit on upgrades to both our infrastructure and training center infrastructure, so that we can find a way to get water down to the trailer park. I'm drafting a letter to the state to help the guy to try to get them to help fund that project. It just seems logical to me that this, they ought to feel a little bit of responsibility to help out with that. I'm hoping that they will, but the main thing with the letter is just to get permission to use the training center infrastructure that we need. If I ever get that state preliminary agreement, I'll be working with Mr. Lockaby to come up with a formal agreement, make sure both sides are covered on the use of the training center infrastructure. And I've been communicating with residents at the trailer park, that they're all up to date. Been working with the Lee family who own the trailer park. And we'll talk about another project later on, but that's essentially it on the mobile home park. The dam improvements project I mentioned a few minutes ago, we actually did get we were offered an extension of at least 1 year on that project. We'll be talking about that in new business. Let's see. There's going to be a presentation by Mr. Taylor from Davenport about the project financing and how that would be affected if you all accept the extension. And that's about it on that. We'll be talking about that in new business. Business friendliness. I did get hold of the engineer for the car wash project. You asked me to do that, I think last meeting, Mr. Pugh. And what I'm going to be looking at doing is, I think I report, I'll give you a quick update. Their range of water use is anywhere from 2125 gallons per day to 12,750 gallons a day. Now, the way I read the county code, it reads that availability fees are to be assessed based on the capacity of the service. That would be the 12,750 gallons a day, which would be an availability fee of about $350,000. I don't think we want to do that. So I've gone back and looked at the code, and what I want to propose, and I'm not asking for a decision now, it'll come up later when the car wash comes in, but I'm going to propose that we use the lower figure. The higher figure is, that is the capacity of the system, but when I talked to the engineer, he said they would only use that whenever they've got a water reuse system on the property, and when that system's down for maintenance or failure, then they would have to use that much water. But what they're actually going to be using on a regular basis, daily basis, should be 2,125 gallons a day, which is still going to generate a pretty hefty availability fee, but it's a much more reasonable way to interpret the code, in my opinion. Again, that's something we'll talk about later. Upgraded communications efforts, we've gotten at least 1,000 email addresses in, and they're still coming in every day. And I'm finishing up the consumer confidence report. When it goes out, it's mailed this month, I'll include a second request for emails. And that will address partly what Ms. Woodfin talked about being able to notify customers about things. Let's see. Water office building. The drive-through, I met with Mr. McCormick and his contractor on May 12th, and there's been a lot of communication since. He has preliminarily approved my request for an easement across the property for a driveway for a water office drive-through. He's asking that we jump on this as soon as possible. He would like, what we need to do is get a detailed survey of both his property and the county property, the county ball fields property. Because what we're looking at doing is running the driveway from our office across both those properties to an entrance on Williams Road. And what he's looking to do, he's hoping if we do this, what he would like to do is get all the heavy work done up front, the grading. He'd like to get all that done by sometime this fall before his tenants start moving in. He doesn't want them to have to deal with that. So I've made a request that, I went back and talked to Sarah Lou, Mr. McCormick, and there's I got a proposal for the driveway survey of $2,500. And when I heard that there was issues with the county park property, because Mr. McCormick would like to have the whole park survey, apparently you all are going to be, the county's going to be doing a park review project. So I went back and talked to Hurt Profit, their surveyor, and they reduced their price. And from talking with Sarah Lou this morning, I understand they cut their price in half for the county project. And I think the total cost now is $4,500 for the total survey, and the service authority would put up the $2,500 for the driveway survey, so it'd be $2,000 for the county. And so I'm asking if we go ahead and proceed with that. I know there's been some discussion in the last couple of meetings about different issues, but we'd really like to get moving on this. Once we do, we got to do the survey, then we got to do a site plan. Then we may have to bid the grading work, and the grading work might take 30 to 60 days. So that's going to be pushing for having this done by October. And so that's what I'm looking for.
All right, Mr. Hopkins, I want you to pause right there because there has been a lot of discussion about this. Mr. McCormick's wishes are, in my mind, secondary to what we're looking at as holistic and progressive approach to the service authority. And so I would like for the board members, including our two new members, if they've got any questions, any concerns, before we start going forward, that those are voiced.
So, Madam Chair, I'll go. I don't know necessarily that the drive-through is going to fix a problem. I know that you're talking about elderly folks getting out of the car, and as I go through the list of advantages in the email that you sent out, all of these advantages could happen with an online payment option for customers. And I know that's on the agenda later, but I would like to weigh those two options, whether it's in our best interest to do a drive-through window in a building that is as old as it is, knowing that we have a master plan coming up where the service authority can relocate, or whether we should figure out a way to absorb or eliminate the 3% bill pay surcharge. And the reason I say that is because I, for one, drive my check over to the water office. I pay every other single bill online. And I drive it over there because of the 3% surcharge. I like to save money. So I hop in my car, drive across the street, drop it off. If I had an option to pay the bill online without the 3%, I would pay it. I pay it that way. And so, my recommendation would be that we weigh those two options, figure out if there are advantages or ways to absorb or eliminate that 3% surcharge, because then you won't have traffic, you won't have safety issues, all of the things that were addressed in this email could be fixed if more people are paying online. That would be my recommendation.
You want me to respond to that now, or will we get to the new business agenda?
Why don't we take everybody's concerns? Anybody else?
I guess the cost to build a road from one point on Phelps Road to Williams Road would be my biggest concern. I don't know what that price would be. What type of standards are you bringing up to, state specs? You're looking at a relatively expensive project, most likely. I may be wrong, I don't know the price tag. So that's my first concern. I'm not necessarily opposed to having to drive through. Then the other thing is I'm not necessarily sold on having us build a brand new building in a undeveloped piece of property that's yet to exist. You know, I can see a situation of, what about that place, just being devil's advocate, went bankrupt, and we have a building sitting there in a bankrupt property. I don't think that's necessarily a good idea either. So, I know Mr. Hopkins has said at this point in time, he's looking at refurbishing the building that's there and using it going forward, unless the board has a different approach. Is that right, Mr. Hopkins?
That's my plan.
You know, and yes, it is old building, but the one right beside it is old, and they're completely redoing it and cutting it, and it's becoming new again. So, just because the building is old does not mean it has outlived its capacity. That's my concerns. Just the price tag is the number one concern. I guess the other aspect of this would be the development of the park behind the school. I mean, there hadn't been a lot of conversation amongst any of us about what's happening there, what's not happening there. I know that there's been some talk here recently, but I'm just not up to par and up to snuff. Would that road also serve as a access to the park? I mean, is this all built in together? I just don't have enough information on that part.
Well, we're still in the infancy, which is
Yeah.
why we need the survey. Once we've got the survey,
Well,
I've been working off excerpts from the county GIS, which is notoriously inaccurate and imprecise. A survey would enable me to sit down and actually plan something out that I can show you all what I want to do. What I'm looking at right now, what I'm considering right now is that the driveway, and it would not be the state standard, it's a driveway. That's all it is. It's perfectly private. It's 10 to 11 foot wide driveway from coming off the park entrance on Williams Road, up the left side of the west property line of the ball fields property, and the west property line of the school property to the north end of the service authority property.
And approximately how long is that? It's at least 100 yards.
No, it's a quarter mile.
Yeah.
It's going to be long, and I'm not looking at doing it all at one time. I'm thinking of doing over a phase project over about 3 years. I think we could go through, and if we can get it all graded and if we can get it all graded this year and do the landscaping along the two property lines that Mr. McCormick has requested, then I think we can do that this year. Next year, we can probably put in the equipment and maybe gravel the driveway, and then just pave it over the next couple of years until we've got it all where we want to do. That's what I'm looking at right now. And again, until we have a survey, we really don't know what we can do with it or what it's going to cost.
Mr. Martin, if you have any questions?
Not sure about questions, but comments. First, I think my fellow authority members had some very, very good comments. And I would say that I do support trying to improve the convenience of our customers, most definitely so. There's been some talk about, park, and I do serve as a liaison to the Parks and Recreation Board. And I think we should commend our Parks and Recreation Board because they're doing exactly what they should be doing, is looking at the future of Parks and Recreation in Ames County. And there is a need for additional parks in Madison Heights. If you look at the majority of where all the county parks are, they're in the western, northwestern part of the county, Georgia. So they were also approached by the apartment developer about the possibility of a dog park. They're in very conceptual preliminary talks about what that area could be. Nothing set in stone. The Parks and Recreation Board understands funding constraints and that they would need to come to the board of supervisors for funding that would have to be funded on. All that being said, I do think we should look at the possibility of a way to reduce the surcharge. I'm assuming the 3% is because they charge us that to use the credit card. I've run into that in other work. But far as doing a park plan, running a quarter-mile driveway to the water service building, I just don't support it right now. I did support getting an easement because I think that puts us in a better place in the future if we need it. I can fully understand Mr. Pugh's thoughts about looking at redoing the building, not building a new building. I'm not sure we know yet. I think we need to look at that entire area as nice that we've talked about before we kind of go out and make any rash decisions and put a bunch of funds. So that's my thought. I would support building anything at this time. I would support doing surveys. That's a good deal.
Mr. Wood, do you have anything you'd like to add? Any questions?
Well, just a comment. I agree to increase to address Ms. Woodfin's questions. I think that technology is how the majority of people moving forward are going to be paying their bills. They're paying them on phones, they're paying them on computers. The 3% fee is relatively high. My understanding, what we should be paying, I think we might want to explore other options for that payment collection. The other side of that is, there's obviously some in-office savings of having an electronic payment where we don't have people handling that actual check, making the deposit. There's some additional savings for that, and I'm not sure how we calculate that. Just from a communication standpoint, when I look at the Service Authority website, that could be an information center to get notices out to customers and having a better way. That the system to pay online is not the easiest. We could also capture all the client's information there, or the customer information on a potential site as well. So, but back to the drive-through, I do think without spending the survey money, we should be able to come up with some sort of cost estimate and weigh the options. But I think moving forward that most people are not going to be dropping off bills at offices.
Mr. Carroll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think a lot of good comments have been made. The questions that I would ask or be thinking about is the proposed development and the likelihood, what the time frame for that is, and how that compares with the 3-year construction implementation schedule for doing a driveway. And if you did do the driveway, would you get the return on your investment prior to moving to a new location, if that is in the plan or not? I also think that a 3-year implementation plan would be problematic. If I was a developer, I'd like to see the project done and not dragged out every 3 years. So I understand the financing being what they are. That maybe that's the reason that you have to make the capital project go longer. That being said, with a decline in revenue over time, then maybe it's not the best time to be making cash expenditures right now. So I would be inclined to hold off on it until the long-term plan about the location of the office is solidified and the long-term revenue structure for the authority has stabilized.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Pugh?
if I may, I was going to ask Mr. Lockaby a question. I mean, I think we're all in agreement about online billing. We'd like to improve that. I'd like to get away from the 3% surcharge. What is as far as the legal aspect, Mr. Lockaby, of sending a bill out versus sending it online? What are the responsibilities of the service authority? Are you required? If we have this option and people are looking to pay online, do we have to send a actual paper bill to their house? No.
They can do exactly the same as the service authority in that respect can do exactly the same as a private utility corporation. I mean, send you a bill whatever way you happen to agree to, same way that you would with ADP. It's just that you have to make sure to adopt the policy at the board level of how you're going to do it. That's it.
Well, that would get back to say, you could save potentially some money with the cost of mailings and so forth by having more people on online billing. So that would help offset a 3% reduction in the online billing you have now. The other thing that Mr. Martin talked about was the right-of-way. We haven't really pinned that down as to if we think we should go ahead and get that right-of-way just for nothing more than maybe future use. I mean, if nothing comes beyond this, we have the ability in the future to have more connectivity down in that area. Just a thought.
Exactly. I don't think it hurts maybe.
Now, whether or not he agrees to that, I mean, not knowing, the other, Mr. McCormick, yes. Who knows, that might be a conversation you need to have, but I would be fine with getting the right of way if we were able to do it, because it wouldn't hurt anything by having it.
I'll be glad to talk to them. So I'm hearing a consensus that this is tabled for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, the drive-through, I think there is consensus to table that. You can talk to Mr. McCormick about the feasibility of a easement. Is that what you were saying, Mr. Martin? An easement? Do we know where we want that easement? And for what purpose?
Well, I think it could be for multiple purposes. It could be for future access to drive-through, or I don't know, it could be for future access to the park. But it gives us a better ability to access the property that the county actually has.
Okay.
So, again, that's where I was at the last meeting. I have no issue with pursuing the easements. I think that puts the service authority and the county in a much better position for the future, adding it rather than not. As far as expending funds for building it at this time.
How many options do we have for this easement? Because that's where I got concerned to start with. And I don't know if we could go further away from this building, but to have an easement where people were driving within 4 feet of a structure that people can go in and go out of, that part caused me concern. So do we have different options where this easement can go?
No, ma'am, that's the only place it can go.
Mr. Rogers, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, just to give you all an update on the facts. We went to, after the Parks and Rec Board meeting, we approached Hurt and Profit about developing a design for the park that included all the things that everybody wanted in it. They came back with a bid of $11,000. I thought that was outrageous. I called Dave McCormick and asked him to come up with a design that he would consider acceptable that includes all the ideas that have been proposed and how they might fit there and how they might work, including whatever it was that he's agreeing to with the service authority. And so the ball is sort of in his court. He said, oh yeah, we can, my designers can come up with this a whole lot easier and lay something out for us to all look at and then begin moving pieces around to make everybody happy. So from the county standpoint, we're waiting for him to come up with a design that's acceptable to him, and we've expressed to him the things we would like him to include in that. And when he gets that preliminary design, we'll then all tweak it. And so ostensibly, I would assume that it would be something that would at least be acceptable to him because he's going to be the one proposing it. We're doing this because initially, he approached me and said he would be willing to partner with us to some degree on improving the park and the ability to use the park. So I told him, well, we're in a slow period here. There's not going to be a lot happening. There's probably not going to even be funding for this until the next fiscal year, which would be next summer, because it's not built into the upcoming FY21 budget. So that gives us time to work out exactly what it is that we want to use the park for. So at this point, we're waiting for him to come up with a design that we can play with.
But Mr. Hopkins, you said there's only one place for these, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're gonna talk to Mr.
If it's not there, they may, well, if you look at the sketch, the easement would go up the west property line, come off the north end of the water office property. If we're gonna go around, there's really nowhere else to put it because you've got public roads to go around the school the other ways.
Okay. So you're gonna approach Mr. McCormick about the easement, right? Okay. Mr. Blackaby, we have a question for you. On this whole billing and being able to send out bills electronically, does a customer have to opt out of the mail or opt into electronic communication or not?
You can set it up any way you would like to set it up. Now, I would probably recommend to you, given that people have already been getting the paper, that you send them something in paper so that you're not basically playing gotcha with people where they just don't get a bill and then don't pay for 4 months until they realize they haven't paid in a while. But you can do it any way you want.
Okay.
It's whatever way you consider reasonable.
All right, board members, do we have any loose ends that we need to address?
Well, Madam Chair, I think we'll be talking about this later on, but we kind of hit on different aspects of it. I think we should explore, I'm not sure if we have or have not done this, but explore different payment methods that might charge less than 3%, because I know some credit card companies charge more than others. And it depends on which payment we want to accept. So I'd like to look at a way of getting that cost for doing online business down.
Do we do automatic debit? Because I use that all the time. Do we not use automatic? Huh?
I don't think so, no.
Could we? Could we pose that as an option as well? Because that's zero cost.
I'll talk to Ms. Wilkes and see how that would be set up.
And then there's always,
Is the county doing that? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know that my utility bills, I do all of those with automatic debit. I mean, I pay a lot of bills just online banking, which doesn't cost anything. There just seems to me that lots of ways to get away around this 3%. Okay.
If I could just comment, respond to Mr. Pugh, one of the things you said about the alternate ways of billing, one of the reasons for getting the email addresses is what I want to do is, I think I explained this in the past, is start emailing bills and save postage there as well as the consumer confidence report, customer notifications, everything else. That's really the main driving factor behind it, the email addresses, is to cut down on the thousands of dollars we spend every year on postage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate, and yeah, we're moving in the right direction, so, you know, I'll take note of the work you've done. I appreciate what you've done about having that foresight, but I think we have a consensus on here on what we want to do, and we'll just go from there.
All right. Moving on, Mr. Hopkins.
Guess we are up to new business. First item is the reservoir dam improvements and the DCR extension request. I got a direction from the board at the main meeting to pursue that. The request went into DCR on May 18th. They responded on the 27th. They said they will immediately grant a 1-year postponement of the entire schedule. And they also said that there may be additional extensions available later on if we have other issues. But to make it short, long story short, there's a lot of stuff in in the agenda item. Mr. Taylor will be talking a lot about that in the next item. But I guess what I'm looking for is whether or not the board wants to go ahead and accept the DCR extension request and put off this project for a year.
Board members?
I'll go ahead, unless there's any objection, I'll go ahead and make the motion that the Amherst County Service Authority Board accept the project extension offered by DCR and postpone the financial, bidding, and construction aspects of this project for at least 1 year.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. Let's wait for Mr. Martin to come back, okay? Mr. Martin, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh dealing with approval to go ahead with the Grand Creek Reservoir Dam improvements. Did you have any questions about that before we move forward for a vote?
No, I'm fine.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion's approved. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins.
There's actually 2 more motions. I've got a motion or requesting the board's direction to execute Hurton Profit's design proposal for the dam. And I think Mr. Wilson is here. If you had any questions for him about the proposal, I think I remember correctly, you should have a copy of it in your packet. Now, one of the things, well, let's go ahead with that first, is that now the project is you all just accept the extension, so the entire project can be delayed a year. Now, Hurton Profit a couple months ago offered to go ahead and do the design this year, but not invoice until next year. So I didn't know whether, how you all wanted to handle that. So I put that in 2 separate motions. One, to accept the proposal, and number 2, as to whether or not you wanted them to, if you accept the proposal, whether you wanted to have them do the design this year or next year and invoices next year.
I usually have some reservations about that approach, but board members, what do y'all think?
Either way, if I can interrupt, one of the things we've been talking about at the last meeting was looking at things in the budget that we can postpone for a year. Either way, I'd like to postpone that $100 and whatever it was $1,000 in the engineering services to next year, and just make sure that we're not going to have the impacts with the revenue fund this year.
So what would you recommend? So what's your recommendation as far as this?
Well, I had one concern about the DCR also offers design grants every year, well, almost every year. They didn't have it in their grant program this year. And I had a concern that if we did the design this year, and we applied for a grant for like reimbursement next year, the DCR might come back and say, no, you did the design work last year, so you're not eligible. But I talked to DCR and Mr. Wilson, and he said that's not the case. So I just assume we'll get the work done this year if possible. It could be something else could happen next year that could cause us some more problems. I think Hurton Profit is open to doing the work now. I'd like to go ahead and proceed.
What's the deadline to get this done?
Originally, we were supposed to have it done, we were supposed to have construction done by the end of 2022, and now it's the end of 2023 since we accepted the extension. So what's the next?
Mr. Wood, Mr. Pirro, do you all have any comments about that?
I would think that Mr. Hopkins is right. Anytime you can try to defer something, you probably should. As far as getting Hurton Profit to do the design now, when you say next fiscal year, you mean excuse me, what year are you talking about? Next calendar year, or are you talking about June 1, or are you talking about next fiscal year, the invoice, which is FY20, or the fiscal year after that, which is FY21?
We're on calendar year. We're not on fiscal year.
So they wouldn't bill until January.
As earliest.
So what benefit to, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, that's very nice of Hurt Profit, but what does Hurt Profit get out of delaying billing for 7 months?
I think good public relations with a valued client. They've been our client for 45 years, something like that. And they know we're in they know I've got some concerns about finances. And I was in a meeting with Mr. Wilson and Biff Johnson, who was the CEO president. And Biff actually brought that up. He said, you know, if you want us to do the work this year and invoice next year, they're you know, to address my concerns, they were willing to do that.
All right, Mark.
All right, board members, with your pleasure. Are y'all okay with doing that? Mr. Pugh?
I suppose if Mr. Hopkins thinks this is the right move to make, and I'll go ahead and make a motion.
All right, Ms. Moore, do you have anything to say? Okay.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that the ACSA board accept Hurt Profits Engineering Services proposal for the dam improvements project and direct the ACSA executive director to sign and return the proposal. And should we include anything about the billing date or anything?
That's in the next motion.
So am I reading the wrong motion?
No, just finish the one you got. We're good.
All right, to sign and return the proposal. That's the motion. That's the second.
All right, motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
And the third motion has to do with working with Hurt Profit to.
All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the ACSA board direct the ACSA executive director to work with Hurt Profit to have the dam improvement engineering services be performed in 2020 with no invoicing of Amherst County Service Authority until 2021.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
That was
Mr.
kind of
Hopkins.
arduous.
Please convey our appreciation to Hurt Profit. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Tell Biff we said thank you as well.
Okay. The next item has to do with the financing of the dam project, and really the majority of this is really going to go away. It has to do with the board adopting resolutions and support agreements and that kind of stuff. But I asked Mr. Taylor from the Ford Company, the financial consultants, to come in case you all had questions about the financing itself or the change in schedule, anything like that. Mr. Taylor is here for any questions you all have. Other than that, this agenda item pretty much goes.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Taylor? Would you get off easy? All right, well, there appear to be no questions. Mr. Taylor, thank you for coming up here.
Sir.
Appreciate it.
Okay. But just to let you know where we are, we have an application into the Virginia Resources Authority for bonds and loan for the summer pool of 2020. And I've been working with Mr. Taylor and the bond attorney, and they will get that application pulled, and we will reschedule that for sometime next year. And we'll be back to them with some mountain of paperwork that we're going to have to do. That's all I've got on that item.
Okay, next.
Next is we have a water purchase contract with the city of Lynchburg, as you're all aware. The contract expires June 30th of 2022, and it requires that by June 30th of 2020, each party has to notify the other of the intent to either renew or to terminate the contract. I forwarded you all a copy of a draft letter to the city expressing our intent to renew. And there's a bunch of stuff in the agenda item about why I think we should do that. It's still about, even with the training center closing, right now we don't know when that's going to happen, but even when they close, it's still a valuable asset to us, and I still want to get that interconnection with the city system as a backup to our water treatment plant. So I'm recommending that that we let the city know that we intend to renew, but there will have to be some renegotiation of contract terms. So I'm just looking for a motion or direction that I can send this letter.
I probably should.
I think you can,
But
but
I won't. Bob or you and myself do the line.
I think that's. All right, board members, are there any questions? Is there a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion that the ACSA board direct the executive director to sign the renewal intent notification letter mailed to the city of Lynchburg Water Resources Department.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Ms. Moore. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
1%.
And Mr. Martin will abstain.
Thank you very much. Next item, I'm pretty much going to just hand this off to Ms. Moore as she asked for this. This is the, well, we talked about this a little bit already, which is the online payments.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from the board's discussion earlier, we're just looking for you to investigate ways and how we can get rid of that 3% surcharge.
I'm not real familiar with, I mean, it's just the way it's been for a long time. I will do that. One thing I did point out to you in an email, if I remember correctly, that one of my concerns, if we just blot it out and just stop doing it. I mean, I think several of you all said that if you don't have to pay that fee, you're going to stop mailing bills. You're just going to do it online. Keep in mind that all of our revenues come from our bills, or probably 95%. Our budget is almost $5 million. So if taking it to the logical extension, if everybody that sends us a bill paid online, that's $150,000 of revenues that just disappears real quick. We've got to find a way to replace it.
Right, and so the way to replace it, if it's the mailing of the bill, can we decrease that? Is it staff time? What efficiencies can be taken? I don't expect you to answer this today. I think you should do some research. Maybe you can work with the county staff to figure out what things can be eliminated so that we're not losing revenue, but customers are not paying that 3% surcharge.
I'll look into it, just understand that there's no way we don't spend anywhere near $150,000 in postage. And I can go back and look at the budget, it might be $10,000, $20,000, so we're still looking at a big drop, so.
Can I say something else?
This is not generally done, so board members, I'm going to ask you if you want to take a question from the audience.
Ms. Wolfen, I'd like to ask you what you've got to say, please.
Well, I
Could
just
you come
thought,
up front so we can
Get
hear
up here so we can hear you. And we've already got your name and address, so you don't have to go through that again.
I just thought that if maybe you all looked at how other utilities do it, and maybe I didn't quite get it across earlier, that with like APCO, because I think you asked about paper bills and whatever. APCO as a customer, I have a choice to continue getting the bill in the mail or getting it otherwise. And I choose otherwise, because if I choose otherwise, then that fee is gone away with if I pay it online. I can certainly still mail my bill in, but I have to also say that this is the only bill that I pay that I have to write a check or pay in cash to avoid a fee. And I just think that maybe we're still doing business outdated, if that makes sense. I think if other utilities have gave you a choice to pay online, and like I pay my DirecTV bill online, I don't get charged the fee. I don't get charged the fee with my Wi-Fi bill or whatever. APCO was the only other utility that was charging a fee, and they actually lowered the fee because it was $2.95. Then they lowered it to $1.85, and then a few years back, they said, well, if you choose pay, we will reward you and not charge you a fee if you choose to pay online. So I just thought maybe you all needed a little further information. And I understand it might take a few months to get all this worked out, but I just think we need to move forward. And I was one of the last people that had a smartphone, but I really like it. And I like paying all of my bills online. I've never had any issues with paying my bills online as far as tax or any of that. So, you know, I really like it, and therefore it would lower my costs too, because then I wouldn't have to keep ordering checks, because you're the only company that I have to write a check for. So I hope that maybe some of that helps with your research on how to do all of this.
It does, Ms. Wood, thank you very
Thank
much, we
y'all.
appreciate it.
Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you for coming down.
I'll just make one last statement. I do understand, I understand that you're gonna lose. If we get away with it right now and today, and everybody did go the route of paying it paperless, unless you come up with a cheaper surcharge for whoever you're using to provide that service to accept the credit card payments, we're gonna lose 3% of our revenue, because that 3% you have to pay directly back to the provider of the credit card service. So we have to figure out a way to either eliminate that, go another route. I don't know the answer, but I guess that's what we're asking you to do.
That's fine. I will look into that. There may be software out there that we can buy where we can just eliminate the service completely and just take the credit card in ourselves and not have to pay somebody. So I really don't know. I've never looked into this before, but I will start.
Thank you.
Your experience in baking, do you have a suggestion?
Oh, sure. I would just point out, Mr. Hopkins, there are multiple vendors that do this sort of thing, and there are various fee structures. I'm happy to look into a couple of those, and you know, we might want to, again, reach out to other municipalities and see what services they're using, or can we bundle with other, you know, with another municipality to maybe get a better rate.
That's
Have
an
we-
idea right
have we-
there. I hadn't thought about that.
I mean,
Have we looked at Vaco to see if maybe they offer something that we could use?
I haven't looked.
Mr.
This
Rogers.
is all new to me, so.
Mr. Rogers, have you looked at that?
I can tell you that the finance department, along with the treasurer, which is, you know, where the county really brings its money into, have looked at all kinds of vendors, and there's different eases and difficulties of use, and then the rates depend upon your average charge and how many charges there are. So if you join with others, you can go through PayPal where people don't pay any fees if they set it up that way. But I've been listening and taking notes, and I'll go back and we'll look if we can't do the automatic transfer, an ACH transfer direct from your, like a debit card, direct from your bank account, no fees. Yes, you can set it up through your own bank. Our bank is BB&T, but because we would be a small vendor, they would charge us a high fee. It's fairly complicated, but there are lots of options out there that we can explore, and we have to consult with Mr. Lockley as what we can't do, given our size and whatever. But yes, ma'am, we're going to look into that.
I think we have beat this horse to death.
Oh, I have
think
one
we have
one more recommendation.
I guess not.
No, but it sounds like that we may have a solution for both sides, both county and the service authority. If we can partner together and get one solution for both, that would be ideal.
Very good. Absolutely. All right. Your schedule?
The next item is we talked about this a little bit ago, the Woody's Lake Road Improvements Project. I mentioned that that we got the one bid in. I had asked Mr. Wilson to go back and check with VDOT to see if maybe they wanted to rebid this, because the one bid came in was actually a little bit higher than Mr. Wilson's estimate. And that estimate was actually more money than VDOT had allocated for the water and sewer line remediations. But he talked to them, and they came back and said, no, they can't afford a delay in the project. They need to have this done this year so they can do the road improvements next year. So I've got two motions. One is I need to have authority to execute the construction contract with the one bidder. And then a second motion to accept Hurd Office Construction Services proposal. Two separate proposals.
All righty, board members. Who wants to make a motion?
I make a motion that the $1.3 million construction contract for relocation of existing ACSA water and sewer lines to accommodate VDOT's Woody's Lake Road Improvement Project be approved, and the executive director to be authorized to sign in and proceed.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Pugh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Thank you. COVID-19?
No, one more.
One more, excuse me.
So I make a motion that the $73,000 construction services proposal from Hurd and Profit for relocations of existing service authority water and sewer lines to accommodate VDOT's Woody's Lake Road Improvements Project be approved, and the executive director, we also have.
Motion on the floor by Ms. Moore, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no, motion passes.
Thank you both. Well, thank you all for both those things. Next one is the COVID-19 update. I want to let you know that the second public service announcement is again going to go out with the consumer confidence report this month. I came up with in one of the meetings I attended, there was a presentation of a procedure for flushing hot and cold plumbing in buildings that have been closed, like businesses, they've been closed for the last couple of months. And I forwarded that to our staff, and I sent it to the New Era Progress. I thought it might be a good thing for them to publish in paper. I haven't seen it in paper yet, but I'm hoping they're going to do that. We got reusable cloth face masks from FEMA, as I mentioned before, and they've been distributed to service authority staff. The water office reopened yesterday with requirements of 2 people maximum in the public area is relatively small. It's very small. So only 2 people allowed in at a time, 1 in each window with 6-foot distancing required. And we've got a sign out front that explains all this along with face masks being recommended, and our staff are wearing face masks and wearing gloves for the foreseeable future. I've attended a bunch more webinars and conference calls about the issue in May, and I mentioned that I'm working with the Department of Health on the stimulus project for the Lakeview sewer. If you all have any questions,
Any questions? Nope.
okay. Next one is the COVID impacts to our budget. Mr. Martin, last board meeting, you asked me to look into it. Again, from the financial report, we haven't been hit as hard as I thought we might be at this point from the business closures and people not paying their bills. I sat down with the operations manager, treatment manager, and office manager, and we went through the budget and picked out all of the low-hanging fruit, the things that we know we can delay until next year, postpone until next year. And we found about $150,000 worth of items, about 10 items there. This is about 3% of the budget. We've talked about the delaying the dam project. That's going to be a total of about another $150,000. We put it off since we're putting it off to next year. And and we talked about the Lakeview Sewer project. If we can get the grant, that's going to save us about $250,000. So I think there's a lot of potential savings there that will see us through this. And as I continue to monitor the finances over the next several months, I'll be sitting down with the managers again and reporting back to you all as to where we are and what we can do to address more issues. We've already found some other things we can do. And as soon as we start get more reports, I'll be back. I'll be reporting on this probably every month anyway. So.
Madam Chair, Mr. Hopkins, thank you for doing that and putting it, looking at ways you could save. I would encourage you to continue to do your educational stuff. So anything in those proposed, savings, I would encourage you to continue letting your people go out and train and get continuing education in the future. 5,000 is just a little bit of money, but I think education goes a long way.
That's a good segue into the next, unless there are questions on that item, that was a good segue into the next item, which is just miscellaneous updates concerning staff. There you go. About 7 of us took a Virginia Tech course on May 21st. And me, Mr. Micklem, Mr. Fulcher, Fitzrow, Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Saunders, well, you got the list there. I've signed up for part of the one of my performance evaluation issues was you all wanted me to take a local government budgeting class. I've signed up with one through ICMA. It's going to be a 10-hour class covering 3 different days. So that actually starts today, but I'll be going through, and I've already talked to ICMA, and I can get they're going to video record all of the webinars so I can watch them at my leisure. And I've got the book on that. There's also another item from my performance evaluation was I need to do a better job of managing up. And it's funny because there's a VR, Virginia Rural Water Association webinar called Managing Up. Building better communication skills in a stressful environment. I've signed up for that. That's on June 11th. And the other issue is I wanted to just let you all know, unless you all have an objection, what I'm looking at is, like we always do, following the county's, the way they do follow the county's guidelines on compensation increases. And we were looking at merit increases in a 3% COLA this year, but we've scrapped the merit increases and reduced the COLA to 2% to match what the county is doing, unless you all have an objection.
Board members, everybody good?
Thank you. And the last thing I've got is just my schedule for the next month. And that's all I've got, unless you all have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. All right, we'll move down to matters from the board. Mr. Martin.
I didn't have anything, but Ms. Wolfton, again, thank you for coming out today. One of the things that I believe you also talked about was when there was a disruption in water service. Mr. Hopkins, I know a lot of times we go out on fires and we draw down the water, you get the scale, and people's water might run dark for a while. Are you sending out any type of public service announcements or these email addresses? What might they help you do that? How do you notify people?
Well, again, that is part of the email program is also to be able to do that. The policy when I came on board, and had been there for decades, was that, if the water is what it is, when people call and complain because of a fire or or a water break or some kind of disruption, then we address it at that point. But I decided when I came on, I didn't like that idea. I want to be able to get out to get notifications out when there's a fire, when there's a water main break, at least to everybody in the general area, so they know that there's an issue. And we've always gone through and when people call in and say, hey, I've got a problem, I told them, run your water, if you want to do this, let us know. I'll send somebody out there, we'll read your meter, and then you run your water for several hours to flush out all your plumbing. Then we'll read the meter again, and we'll eat that cost. We've always done that. So those are the two things that we're doing. When we have the email addresses in place and we've got the software and can make this thing happen, I think we're going to see a lot of this issue go away.
All right, so what I don't want to get into it that much, but what I hear you saying is, if there's an issue, you will offer to go out and read the meter beforehand, let people flush their system, read it after, so that they're not charged for having to flush their system.
That's always been the ACSA policy,
Okay.
since long before I came on.
Can you get with Ms. Wolfton separately and talk to her about that policy?
Okay, well, we've been talking, but I'll continue.
All right, thank you. Nothing else, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pugh.
I have nothing.
Ms. Moore.
I just want to add to Mr. Martin's statement. As a customer, though, we would have to know to call the service authority. And I'm not sure as a customer, I would know to call you if my water was a different color. Or what necessarily to do. So are you saying that a customer should know all the policies of the service authority?
No, but it's regular. I mean, you know where the water's coming from. And if there's a significant difference in the water from one day to the next, or you just see something about the water you don't like, I mean, people are usually pretty good about calling who is providing them the service and saying, hey, I got a problem.
So
What
how
are you gonna
many
do about it?
How many calls do you tend to get?
What would you say? With the water main break, we get, well, I typically get 3 or 4.
So is there a better way besides email addresses that you can communicate with customers?
Right now, no.
What about social media, millennial here?
If we got a major problem or something, we could, I guess, go back to you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the news is the best option, but what happens if you were to use the county's Facebook page or have a subset for the service authority Facebook page, so at least something's out there?
Well, the issue with that is typically when you see a water problem, by the time people call in, we're typically already working on it. By the time we've got something on Facebook or social media, it can be fixed. And then it's just a matter of flushing the lines. And we can certainly do that. I can get a hold of Joy and ask her to, Ms. House, and ask her to do something on Facebook when it's happening. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't get a call from Comcast when the cable goes out, telling me one of my, I think we're asking for a lot here. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And we got to use all avenues available, and I agree with some of the stuff that is said, but my power goes out, I call the power company, what's going on, or I try to put in a call to them and complain that the power's out, but they're not calling me, telling me my power's out.
Well, I go online.
It's kind of, you're going to have disruptions, and everything's not always going to be smooth.
But we've been fighting this. I know in her particular case, they had to fly down there, I just kidding.
But can I just say this?
No, we're winding up because we've got another meeting.
Because I did call and I was not told of the procedure that he just said and was there. I did call and my next door neighbor did call, and we were not told of his procedure that they would come read our meter so that we could flush our line. That was, and we called more than one time.
That's good to know. Thank you, Ms. Woodman. Appreciate it.
I know other localities issue press releases for water notices. You know, I think if your cable goes out, that's one thing. But if your drinking water becomes dirty and unfit for consumption, that's an entirely different thing. So I think what we're talking about is there a way to notify our customers better, which I think we can always do better. And I think what Ms. Moore was talking about is, can we make sure that people understand that if they're, you know, when we're telling them their line should be flushed, what we can do to aid them not having to pay for water that they really use. All right. So I think Ms. Hopkins is willing to go and look at some of those things. You've got some procedures in place. Sounds like there's still a misunderstanding between you and Ms. Woodman. Maybe y'all can work that out later, but I don't think we're going to do that right now.
Ms. Martin, what's your public safety hat on a minute? I got a question. Now I have a question. So do we have a mechanism in this county to target certain phone numbers in certain localities for an emergency or a disruption of any sort?
I believe the county does have that in their 911 system. So, yeah.
Okay.
You have to.
So, Mr. Rogers, come up here a second. Could we somehow leverage that system to target certain zip codes or certain streets?
I recommend that the director speak to the director of public safety about how to do that.
Okay.
And he and I have been working on that. It's just for the last couple of months, Sam has been incredibly difficult to get hold of because of how busy he is, and I've been in the same boat. But he and I are working on that, and we did get it was about a month ago, I think we did do 1 or 2 broadcasts by reverse 911, and it's the communications, the procedure for us doing that through the public safety issue, just our department has not been set up yet. So, but Sam and I are working.
Okay, good. All right, I don't have anything.
I just want to say thank you for being here.
I don't have anything. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Service Authority meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Ms. Hopkins, we gave you a lot of homework. Hope you were taking good notes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.